Hey, it's Rod. I'm back. I've got these people that were presenting earlier today. I see Pam there, and Gretchen
Hello.
and Sally,
Hello.
and is that Ben and Mary Lynn both over there? Where are you guys at, Ben and
Absolutely.
Mary Lynn? Where are you at?
We're in the London airport.
Oh, no kidding.
Very industrial.
Hi,
Well,
Pam.
Looking
Hi.
very industrial. Hey, Pam, welcome back to BI.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got a couple people at an airport. Sally, where are you at?
I'm in my home. That was not going to be my home much longer. I've got stuff everywhere. It's a mess. Yeah.
It's moving day eve.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Excellent. And
Because
Pam.
you needed that this week, so, for sure.
I could barely hear you, Marilyn. Sorry.
I said because you needed that this week.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Right?
It's just timing.
Yeah, just
but it's good.
tie that all in there together. Yep.
And Pam, where are you at?
I'm sitting at home in Sarnia on the couch that I haven't spent much time on, so it feels really good just to lounge around for a bit.
Excellent. And Gretchen?
I'm at my house here, out in the middle of the country. No air conditioning. It's pretty hot in here. Yeah.
Lots of plants.
Lots of plants.
And I'm Rod. I'm still in Komoka, Ontario. I've been here sort of all day. I spent part of my day playing with some media. And just for those people that might be listening to this, to let them know, these are some people that helped put together the first day presentations for an online conference called LK Launch. And just to further flesh that out a bit, I'm going to ask Ben. Ben, if you were going to describe what this thing is that's happening this week, what would you say it is in a nutshell?
So I know like many districts do like a launch PD session before school starts. And we were interested in that. How do you help teachers learn? But we thought, we could probably do it a little differently. So what if we leverage technology and engage with everybody so that people can engage with this learning, who are teachers with the Lambton Kent School Board, from wherever they are. And also, if we did it digitally, we could archive the sessions and we could actually record them, and then we could reference them later. So, as this idea kind of kept coming forward and kind of trying to understand it better, then it was like, well, you know what? Well, why would we make that private? Like, why does learning have to just live and be owned by a district? Why can't we just invite people who'd like to jump in and be part of the conversation and learning? Today, not to jump ahead, but today we had actually retired teachers from the Lambton Kent School Board jumping in who just wanted to reconnect and really enjoyed the learning in the Indigenous perspectives that were shared first thing this morning. I had an email thanking me for making it public. So, so we had others to engage with us. So the idea was, it's not a new concept to like do a launching type PD event, but we thought, what if we kind of try to leverage the technology and then just open up the doors, Rod?
Yeah, and you're not missing a flight.
No, we're good. Not yet.
Well, we've had when last I met with folks from your school board was June. And so all of July went by and half of August went by. And I'm interested to hear from folks that presented today, like what was that experience like? Just what was your experience like from the end of a presenter in working in a novel environment like Zoom that we've been using for this conference?
Who's going to go first? It's always the question.
Oh, it's you, Pam.
Oh, it's me? I think it went well. And I think it went well because we had the technical support. Like a lot of the jitters that we had, chatting amongst like texting and that sort of thing, people were just a little unsure, like who's pressing the go button and who is, like that sort of thing. So having a facilitator really calmed my nerves right up this morning. So having that. So I think that was just because it's unknown. And when you are presenting, like Gretchen and I have done this a lot. And, Sally, you've done a bunch this year too. And Ben, Mary Lynn, that's your job, sharing information, that you're always in control of the go button and click the slide button. So it was just a little bit of unnerving to know, how do you start and what happens if there's technical things. So it was great to have that facilitator.
So having done presentations before, Gretchen, how would you say this was the same and what was different about it?
It's a little different not having responses from people, like the immediate responses and being able to see their faces and everything. But having people reach out to us afterwards by email, or if they had anything to share in the chat was nice. It'd be nice to be able to encourage that a bit more as well. But when it was done, I said, this is really great. This was easy. And you can see us using this more. I thought that it went really well.
And Sally, in your presentation, there seemed to be a lot in the back channel, and you said, well, you're sorry you sort of didn't see it go on, and you'd like to revisit some of that. I know Ben and I were both keeping an eye on it, and you had a couple of co-presenters that were sort of mining it as well. Was there a plan at the outset with your group to have someone keep an eye on that?
So we talked about the fact that, well, I was going to have it on, I wasn't going to have it on, and then in the end, I didn't have it on the chat. I think it might have been a little too distracting for me to manage, like kind of facilitating the discussion and then also reading the chat along. It might probably be too distracting for me. So it worked out well that I wasn't seeing the chat. And then we kind of agreed that if somebody in the chat was making a point or had a question, then one of them would bring that into the discussion, which I think they did a great job of, from what I know, but I didn't see all the chat. And then Jen was responding to some in, like, she was kind of typing, which I think was great. So for Friday, I'm hoping that we can ask, we have actually 2 people coming in with us on Friday, Denise Slad and Greg Van Bundren. So I'm gonna ask one of them if they will be responsible for maybe bringing in that conversation from the chat, because I know I can't manage both of those things.
Rod, can I jump in on that?
Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
So I thought was interesting is that Sally really focused on the facilitating conversation with the table group that was then captured and shared online, and the conversation in the chat really mirrored that. So I thought that was fascinating to me, how much that mirrored how Sally was facilitating. She didn't really need to put a lot of effort into it because the chatter continued on exactly as she was modeling.
And I know I couldn't resist, like, getting in there. As interesting as the conversation was, the related chatter in the back channel was going on other topics that were just as interesting, and then they ended up falling into the conversation as well. That sounds like moving instructions. Is that that's not a moving truck, Sally?
Can you hear? Yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on in the background here because there's people coming and going, and I'm just like, shh, go on.
Okay,
it's a busy place tonight.
So we had a couple of, I'd say that's a bit of a challenge to try and moderate and keep an eye on what's going on, as well as present and maintain a focus on the conversation. I think that worked really well. I'm curious if there were other things that you found to be challenges that maybe weren't foreseen. Is there anything that really, anybody, this is open to anybody, is there anything about the experience of working remotely like that you found a surprising challenge?
I think we decided to go to our central board office rather than work from our home, just because we weren't confident in our own internet connection at home. So Gretchen lives in a rural environment, and I live in an area, Sarnia, that its Wi-Fi service isn't up to snuff at times. So we had that in the back of our head about confidence with the technology side. So we thought we would go to a spot where it would service us well. But I think if we were I think I would have confidence with going from a school or doing this from home another time.
I think having somebody else there, like doing, like, the people who are leading the discussion, then having somebody else there to man the side is great. I was worried about how the Zoom would work, and because I haven't facilitated anything on Zoom, and it was actually pretty simple. So that was useful, like just being able to share the slides. So that was pretty good too. I didn't find anything too challenging. Like, I know when we presented the first time on the PD day, that was a challenge because it was a kind of Sam and I back and forth, and there wasn't other teachers in to have conversation with us. And so I really liked today's where we're able to have the conversation with the teachers, and they're coming, like I'm coming at from my perspective of what I want to share. So it's nice to have a teacher who's like going to be doing it to like say, hey, like what about this and how can we do this, and like bringing things that like is important to them.
Yeah, I think when we met in June, I think one of the most enlightening and important insights that was shared was when Ben was trying to give the idea about having someone play a conversation, maybe someone be a questioner, someone be a devil's advocate, you know, making it conversational. And I think both workshops were distinct and separate in that way. So maybe we could just reflect for a second about how you prepared for that. One of the conversations to me seemed much more sort of casual. We just sat down and are talking about this. And the other seemed a little bit more planned and sort of intentional in the directions that we went. So maybe we could have you just talk a little bit about the planning that went into that conversation aspect of your presentations. Maybe we can start with Gretchen.
For ours, we really did a lot of learning last year with teachers and presentations, and I've had a lot of teachers ask questions about Indigenous content, Indigenous perspectives and history, and we were really basing it on things that we've learned over the past year, and also some of the questions that teachers have asked of us a lot, or of me a lot. So we wanted to address those questions, especially in our presentation. So that's what we based it on, our reflection on last year and where we want to go in this upcoming year.
Knowing the topics that the audience, there was already an appetite for those types of things. Does that sound right to you, Pam?
Yes, I would agree with that. And two, there's a sensitivity side of like the truth and reconciliation piece. Like, you know, people want to get it right. So like, I think we were trying to get the message to be clear. Hopefully that came across. Tomorrow when we go through it, we're talking more about cultural appropriation, and we have a third person in our conversation. So it's a little bit more of a back and forth, share your story, ask questions that way too. So I think it will be interesting for us to share our own reflections on today, where Gretchen and I felt like we could have that conversation and reflect each other, but then it was a different environment bringing a third person in. So Sally, what you experienced today with many people involved in the conversation is very different than what Gretchen and I experienced.
Yeah, and I think our topic lent itself to a conversation because lots of teachers have been trying out flexible seating and are interested in it. And we kind of just basically, the way we had planned the workshop was just to, let's talk about the why and let's talk about the how. And the why kind of like we had some key points like choice, community, those types of things, just as like conversation starters. And I had prepared like a question or two for each one. And then I had some kind of notes as to like, these are things I think are important. And if they didn't come up in the conversation, then I might add them in. But I really didn't feel like I had to add much in because the conversation just came the teachers. So I think the topic was an easier one to have that like like a discussion. It was like we're sitting around having coffee planning for September.
Your creativity and your own creativity, thinking your students in mind, like how they learn and what they need. There's much more flexibility in how that gets done in your flexibility discussion.
Yeah, and I think Sally, and you anticipated the topics that you were going to go to, and a lot of times when it was when the slide sort of advanced and a new keyword came up, it was like, oh, we already talked about that. It was sort of the topics all just were naturally interconnected throughout. So there was that sense of flow throughout. Maybe I'll ask Ben and Mary Lynn this question about the topics in this conference, these workshop topics. It seems to be there's a lot of math, there's a couple Indigenous education, and then there's a sort of a potpourri of other little interests. And what's your feeling about the topics for this conference, how they came to be, and maybe what might be next?
Go ahead, Marilyn.
I don't know. We have a strong focus in mathematics for the board and for the province, so that one's going to be there no matter what. many of the people presenting are math coaches, so they use what they've learned this year. Sally's flexible seating, I think that was her own. It's a huge interest piece for her and something she's experimented with and worked with in her own classroom before she ever became a math coach. And now that she is a math coach, she's seeing classrooms that maybe aren't as flexible as maybe they need to be. And so it's spurred even more interest in that area. Certainly Gretchen and Pam have worked all year long Indigenous interests and trying to promote learning in our board, because we have so many people that are in a place of not knowing HGN, not knowing where to begin, and that was recognized in today's session with them. So a lot of it is their own interest. I think their own interesting topics that they know need to be addressed within the board, and then also where the push is from Ben and I and the province.
So where's your next? We want to keep people moving forward, and we want to keep this work happening. There's no question about it. But the other part is that with such a strong team, we've been able to learn and listen and get feedback around what are key areas people have questions about. And I think Gretchen really hit that point earlier. Like her work today was an extension of the work that's happened all year long. It's responsive to the needs of our schools and really to our students around the Indigenous perspectives and really the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, our calls to action. So I think that the truth is, well, we can map out where we think it'll go. Where it's going to go, it's going to go where we know when we get feedback from others and we're responsive to the learners and the schools and break down to the students sitting in the desk. Like, what's that like? Are they, is their choice and voice honored in a flexible seating environment? Are they being really brought into the Indigenous learning perspectives or not? Like, I think today was a good example of the fact that we're responsive workshop sessions that match the needs of our system.
Yeah, and so
sorry.
Go ahead, Sally.
I was just going to say that when we started planning this workshop, Ben and Mary Lynn said, like, what do teachers want to know? Like, what are they still curious about? What are they asking you? And so that's how I came up with the 2 sessions. When teachers hear that I had been doing flexible seating in my class, they want to know all about it. And that's a big question. So we always have conversations about that. And then with our workshop on Friday, we seem to be getting a good idea of where students are at and what they're doing with respect to the operations. And they're like, well, what do we do now though? Like, how do we do that? And so there's still questions out there about that. So that's how I decided on the workshops, based on what Mary Lynn and Ben prompted us to do.
Mm-hmm. So what I'm hearing is there's sort of a blending of the expertise that's in the group, Ministry of Education initiatives, and then sort of the push and the needs that are identified in local. And all of those things are certainly relevant for the topics that were chosen. And just with 10 sessions, it's got to be relatively narrow, but if you're hitting those needs, I think that's really, really key. One of the things that really struck me early in the morning was there was a picture that Gretchen and Pam shared of the globe of the Earth tilted and viewed from that perspective of on top and above, and that tilted.
Absolutely.
That shift, that way of thinking differently about things is really what a lot of the topics that you've been looking at have been about that. But we know the Ministry of Education is sort of wanting to have an agenda where they have greater expertise in teaching using e-learning initiatives, whether it's online courses or using digital tools. And so I'm curious about what shift in perspective might have come for you from any aspect of this, setting up this workshop. What's a shift that took place for you? We'll sort of go around the table, but it might be technological about teaching online, or it might be about thinking about the material that you've looked at. And the reason I ask the question is kind of like one of my top secret agendas in sort of facilitating a conference like this is that this is, whether you like it or not, it's kind of PD for you to teach in this environment, whether it's preparing a workshop or working in a new place to teach it. So I'm curious to know, what's that shift that may have happened for you based on this morning's experience? Maybe we can go around the table. I'll start with Gretchen. What do you think?
I think, okay, so I remember when we first started talking about this, I was a little bit concerned. I didn't know how it was going to work. And at the end of the session today, I said to Pam, I was like, this is great. I can see this being a way that I do a lot of workshops for teachers in the upcoming year. I think that this was really great. We can reach a lot of teachers this way, and not just in our school board too. I think it's important for us to share our learning with as many people as we can. So I think that this was a really, it did shift my thinking that way for sure.
Pam?
When Gretchen said that, I agreed with it partly. I thought there was going to be like content things that would be a great delivery system. And maybe because we took the more stance today, it was a reflect on what we have done and shared and what's moving forward, because the theme of ours was a lot about find comfort in the discomfort. So a lot of times it's like we try something and we share the reflection has kind of been the way we've worked this year, and weren't so shy about sharing the tensions that we had around things like that. So there's times where it's information sharing and getting a message out and give people time to think about it. But I do think there's also an important aspect of coming together and meeting and working on things and the hands-on section. So I almost see it as almost a combination of like maybe 1 week it's content that's shared ahead of time, and then maybe the next week it's a follow-up with a face-to-face, or vice versa. Like, so there's a combination of it. I think so. I definitely think there's a place for it. And the week is going to be really powerful because we have so many. Anytime we've taken opportunities to learn in different places, like when we went out to Visanquit School and went to Petrolia, took into a classroom in Chatham, like we have people show up that normally wouldn't show up because of location. So this is just a different way of having location accessible to everybody and equitable to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Two quick things.
Go ahead, Ben.
Our plane's about to leave, so we have to jump off.
Yeah.
Number two, I think one thing is the value of the archiving of the learning. Mm-hmm. So it's not for all the times, but there is some key times that it's nice to actually have the video archive of what's happened today that can live on. So like Gretchen and Pam can reference somebody and say, you know what, I get it. Why don't you take a look over here to start the conversation, then we'll continue that on in a different context if needed. But so I think the archiving of what's been learning is kind of interesting as well.
Mm-hmm. Mary Lynn, and
thank you, Rod.
Oh,
yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Ben.
No, I don't have anything to add.
Well, if you have to leave in the midst of this call, go get a flight.
We do have to go.
Have a safe trip wherever you go. Where are you going?
We're going to see John Hattie, who's a education researcher in Ottawa. So we're super excited to see him.
Awesome. Have a safe trip.
More about where to next.
Yeah.
That's what
That's
That's his thing.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Rod. Good to see everybody.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
And Sally, how about you? You maybe put a cap on this. What about a shift for you?
Oh my gosh, like listening to everybody speaking is, that's what I like best. It's like hearing other ideas just sparks so many ideas for me. And so a few things. When Pam was talking about like sending something out in advance, and then Ben started talking about just referring them back, reminds me of that flipped learning that we could do in the classroom, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like getting them prepared for the session, and then the conversation can happen. And that's what I liked best about today is I like hearing from I like it to be a kind of mixed situation where we can all kind of bring different points of view and share our ideas. And I feel like we just all grow so much when that can happen. So I'm excited about that. I like the chat and how people can join in. I like the convenience. For me, if I were to, be able to, if I want to listen to Pam and Gretchen's, I can just go to the blog, listen to that when it works for me. I didn't have to sit on this session, but if I wanted to, it would have been really convenient for me to be, wherever I was and log in, which I'm going to do this week. I'm going to listen tomorrow to the sessions and I'm excited for it. Well, actually, wait, I might not be because I'm going to be moving tomorrow morning.
Yes.
I will listen in on Wednesday if I can get somewhere where there's Wi-Fi, but my house, this is an odd situation.
Yeah.
So the convenience, the conversation, and then that flipped type learning, I think it was really great. And I'm excited for us to collaborate more with the teachers in the school and like do this learning with each other, because I feel like everybody has something to bring. And then also like the other boards, like hopefully other people will join in and we can learn from them as well. So I like it.
Yeah, it's kind
There's
of
something
like,
else I was thinking.
yeah, go ahead, Gretchen.
Oh, that was Pam.
That was me.
Sorry, Pam.
I was just thinking too, like planning this, like it was in the summer. So like, you know, we used a lot of technology to get together and plan. But for the topics that Gretchen and I are talking about, we had done some work on it already this year. So especially this one, first session, because it was reflecting our journey path. So we had lots of content to pull from. And so our struggle was actually shrinking it down to the 40-minute time frame, because we cut out a lot and, you know, had to trim our stories, that sort of thing. But we were confident about what we were trimming and how to trim it because we had done it live beforehand. So I'm wondering, like, just because often when you have those sessions, when you have people in front of you, you have a plan for the 90 minutes that you're with them. And sometimes you're like, ooh, that's taken way longer than we thought it would because it needed that piece. So working forward, I feel more confident about going into a new topic without knowing all those pieces. Like, you know, because we had already had many dry runs through, I felt confident with our content. I don't know if it was a brand new topic, how confident I would be in 40 minutes.
Right. And that mirrors one of the things in the instructional technology course that I teach. We get to this specialist class. Maybe Sally will be there one day. But
I will be.
But the specialist challenge is to sort of teach in this environment like you folks did today. And one of the things I encourage people to do is pick a topic you know, so that's not a challenge. The challenge is not that topic. The challenge for you is this new avenue, this new way of sharing what you know and trying to engage an audience in learning it. So I want to finish with congratulations and kudos to you. This, like, day one, you all, I don't know how you ended up on day one. But day one, people, there were two really terrific workshops, and they were distinctly different from one another.
Yes,
so I think you've set the bar really, really wonderfully for the rest of the week. And I will let you know the videos from your presentations and the audio versions of that are available in a website. I'll put in the chat, I'll put a link to it just before I hang up. But they're available there, and so you can review them. But I've also got the videos are on YouTube as well, and I'll put a hyperlink in the resource page as well, so that people can sort of stream it as opposed to having to download a large video file in order to watch it, or audio file. But I know each of you are coming back for more. You each have more presentations to do. So I'm interested in reconnecting with you later in the week for ever so brief a time, just to see how that growth has continued throughout the week. So thanks a lot for taking the time. Is there anything you want to say before we close off the recording?
I just want to say, I don't know if we said it in the recording, but thank you, Rod.
Yeah, miigwech.
Yeah, miigwech. Made me think about TV shows and radio shows. There's a reason why you need a lot of producers.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It ran very smoothly, so yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Well, I knew from the first time that I met you folks that as a team, you really, you're trusting of one another and supportive of one another, and your leadership at the board level is fully behind you. So you've got a team that is able to do things like this that in other places it might not work. So congratulations to everybody. Let's have a great rest of the week.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye. Yeah, we'll see you tomorrow.
All right. Thanks very much, all.